They haven't always seen eye to eye, but when it comes to Iran, both the U.S. and Israel agreed on one thing yesterday. Iran must be stopped from creating nuclear weapons. In a meeting at the White House, President Obama declared we will always have Israel's back, but said talk of a preemptive strike against Iran is premature and that diplomacy must be the first step. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not mention diplomacy. He said his country has the right to defend itself with an early attack. It was a point he echoed at an American-Israel Public Affairs Committee speech late last night.
We're determined to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. We leave all options on the table, and containment is definitely not an option. The Jewish state will not allow those who seek our destruction to possess the means to achieve that goal. A nuclear-armed Iran must be stopped.
Joining me now with reaction to Prime Minister Netanyahu's meeting with the president is Daniel Levy. He's a senior fellow at the New American Foundation. Daniel, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Betty.
Well, President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke of unity on Wednesday, but they don't agree when it comes to Iran. Why aren't the two leaders on the same page?
Well, I think the Israeli Prime Minister is trying to draw a red line at a place far closer to where we are now for potential military action than where the American president and the rest of the international community are at when it comes to Iran's program. For the Americans, it's getting close to weaponization that could precipitate some kind of action. The Israeli Prime Minister sees things in terms of further developments in Iran's enrichment, in Iran's facilities. And I think the American president says, give diplomacy, give pressure, give sanctions time. I think the Israeli Prime Minister will give those things time, but he's trying to keep up the pressure and trying to push the president as far as he can on those red lines.
What do you think about that speech that Netanyahu made last night?
Well, I think it was a speech that went down well with the audience. It was also, of course, intended for home. But I think that we had a lot of bellicosity, but I don't think the Prime Minister is budging and is about to act militarily himself. He doesn't have a consensus for that inside the Israeli decision-making circles. He himself is not a Prime Minister who has taken risky military action in the past. Politically, it's a very, very risk-heavy thing for him to do. But I think it was a scary message. It was an "I'm crazy enough to do it" message. He also pushed back against the president. The president said, bluff and bluster and talk of war helps Iran. It pushes up petrol prices. It's not good. Iran is weaker if we don't talk like that. And the Israeli Prime Minister gave us more bluff and bluster, which may well translate at the petrol pumps for Americans and for others into higher petrol prices.
So you're saying it's a lot of saber rattling, but behind the scenes, could there be a compromise, say, between the U.S. and Israel when it comes to Iran and the nuclear program there?
I think the compromise largely exists already, Betty, and the president in his speech and in the meeting has outlined that America will not pursue containment, will not allow Iran to cross a threshold of actual weaponization, and will have Israel's back. And I think for many, and very possibly for the Israeli Prime Minister as well, that's going to be enough to not undertake military action, but apparently not to ratchet down the war beat in terms of the talk. But I think we're still talking the talk rather than walking the walk here.
All right, very quickly, relations between the two leaders have been strained for some time now. Has this trip by Netanyahu changed any of that?
I don't think so. I think the president sees the Israeli Prime Minister acting politically in his own backyard. He's close to the Republican leadership. They share the same donors. And I think they, of course, also don't see eye to eye on the Palestinian issue. Remarkably, the Israeli Prime Minister has not mentioned the Palestinians during his visit here. The American president, of course, did raise that issue in the meeting and in his speech.
All right, Daniel Levy, thanks so much for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.